Welcome ladies and gents, Crystal and Dre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter, or of course you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. Let's talk about Canelo Alvarez and his future, because there's been a lot of controversy surrounding him post-fight against Gennady Golovkin. In the press conference, once again, it was posed at him that he's avoiding David Benavidez. First and foremost, this is not a Canelo fanboy channel. You have to understand, I'm a guy that thought that Golovkin beat him in both the first two fights. I thought that Erislandy Lara beat him. I picked Dimitri Bivol to beat him pre-fight. I was very critical of the lenient punishment he got for the whole Mexican beef scandal. I am somebody who's been very critical of Canelo weight, this idea that you can fight at a catch weight for a world title below a specific weight category. I'm going to fight a dude at 158 for the middleweight title, fighting for the middleweight title, but he can't be a middleweight at 160. I've been very critical of these things when it comes to Canelo Alvarez, the favoritism. But this is not a fanboy channel. You guys should know by now that I am neutral. I'm honest. I say what I see. I will criticize and I will praise the same dudes. So when people are accusing Canelo Alvarez of ducking David Benavidez, and he's coming out and he's saying, what has this guy achieved? Who has he fought? He's only fought Anthony Durrell, one champion. He's also made another couple of stupid comments, which we're going to get to, like, I don't want to fight any Mexicans because I represent Mexico. He'll be criticized for that here too. Don't you worry about that. But this idea that he's ducking David Benavidez, where has this come from? You have to understand who it is we're talking about here. It's Canelo Alvarez, the cash cow of the sport, the face of boxing. There are dudes from here to Poughkeepsie and all the way around to Timbuktu lined up waiting to fight this guy because of what he offers. It's not just a monetary payday. It's also the question of prestige. If you dethrone the king, you take his throne and all his treasure. You take it all. The crown belongs to you. We're not talking about Dimitri Bivol here, who's Russian and who doesn't speak English very fluently, and as a result he's not going to build up a big fan base. We're talking about the likes of Jamal Charlo, who want the shot, of David Benavidez, potentially Zurdo Ramirez. These are guys that would have massive fan bases behind them. Just like the movie Highlander, where one warrior kills the other and he takes all his powers. That's what it's going to be like if one of these dudes dethrones Canelo Alvarez. So there's so much to gain. You've got 10 dudes waiting to fight him. So if he fights one of them, the other 9 are going to be saying, oh, he's ducking us. You got to put yourself in a position where you cannot possibly be denied. You've got to fight another 1 or 2 of those top 10 dudes. In no other sport does it happen where you've got fighters fighting C-level guys and lower level B-level guys, and they get this reputation and they're put on a pedestal as these great fighters, and all of a sudden they should definitely get a shot at the title. Imagine this in football, right? Soccer, as our American friends call it. Imagine you got the World Cup, and in the World Cup final, on one side of the draw, you've got, not Canelo, obviously, we're talking football, you've got Mexico on one side of the draw. And on the other side, you're still at the quarterfinal stages. And you've got England, you've got Italy, you've got Brazil, you've got Germany, and all these teams, they want to face each other. And all of a sudden, one of them turns around and says, listen, I don't want to play in the quarters or the semi. Just give me a shot in the final. What? I'm not saying you've got to beat all the other quarterfinalists, but you've got to beat 1 or 2 of them. You've got to win the quarters, you've got to win the semis, and you're going to get a shot. Where does this idea come from that you can just bypass these things? Now, somebody said to me at this point, Chris, you should know that it's all about the money. It's not about who you've beaten. That's not what boxing is. It's all about the money. Benavidez would offer more money than anybody else. He'd offer more money than Charlo. He would offer more money than Demetrius Andrade. So why wouldn't he fight him? Oh, so now competition and what you've achieved no longer matters. Now all of a sudden it's about the revenue that's generated. All right, why are you pining for him to fight David Benavidez then? Why aren't you screaming for the rooftops for him to make the Jake Paul fight? He'll generate more money than all of them. Because you know that Jake Paul has not earned his position. By the same token, David Benavidez has to earn his position. Now listen, I'm using an extreme example there. David Benavidez could very well beat Canelo Alvarez. I'm not saying he would, but he has a real chance, because you're talking about a very big super middleweight who has one of my favorite knockouts I've ever seen, by the way, with those short, fast hands of his, those little combination power punches. He's got some lovely skills, David Benavidez. He's durable. He's a size guy and he's incessant. The way Canelo Alvarez relies on controlling tempo with individual powerful pot shots, if he can't hurt you and you're going to keep coming at him late in a fight where he wants to take portions of rounds off and you're putting it on him, if he's going to gas like he did against Gennady Golovkin in the last 4 rounds, Who knows what could end up happening to him if he fights David Benavidez? He could lose that fight potentially. Now, Benavidez is easy to hit, and Canelo will fancy his chances of hurting him, but David Lemieux's a big puncher. And yeah, all right, he was washed. He was way past his best, but power's the last thing to go, and he was landing pretty flush on him, and he didn't get him out of there. So it's an interesting fight. If the fight's made tomorrow, I'm not going to complain. But if Canelo Alvarez is going to go down another route, you can't sit there and say he's ducking. Put yourself in a position where he can't afford to not fight you. Somebody said to me, what are you talking about, Chris? Who had he fought when he got the Floyd Mayweather shot? That's better than Anthony Durrell. And I said, are you kidding me? Are you winding me up right now? Austin Trout was an undefeated light middleweight who had just beaten Miguel Cotto comfortably. This isn't 2015 anymore. We're not talking about the Anthony Durrell that was fighting Sakio Bika and what have you. The Anthony Durrell that ended up fighting Benavidez, he had just prior to that, the very fight prior, he'd won a narrow technical decision win over Avni Yildirim. And then when I say narrow, two of the judges had it very close. I think they had them 2 rounds apart. In the 10th round, the fight ended because of a clash of heads. And Avni Yildirim, who 2 fights after fighting Anthony Durrell, came to the UK and fought Jack Cullen, a British domestic level fight, and he got schooled. He lost wide. And that victory, a close, hard-fought win over him, is what prepares Anthony Durrell for being a legitimate win to put you in contention to fighting Canelo Alvarez. You're going to compare that to Austin Trout, who was undefeated and put on a clinic against Miguel Cotto? Come on, man. And here's another reason, by the way, that you need to build up a CV before you get a big shot. And why, unless you do, a lot of top-level fighters are not going to want to fight you. Because what do you bring to the table in terms of legacy? Because at the time, Austin Trout was considered a real test for Canelo Alvarez. But now, in retrospect, who has he fought, right? Same thing happened with Joe Calzaghe when he fought Jeff Lacey. He put a beating on that boy, he whooped that boy, and all of a sudden, who had Jeff Lacey ever fought? Calzaghe hasn't got any big wins. Roy Jones was old. Bernard Hopkins was old. Jeff Lacey was overrated. At the time, you weren't saying Jeff Lacey was overrated. At the time, Jeff Lacey was the new Mike Tyson, and he was going to smash that boy to pieces. He was going to put a whooping on that boy. But it was the other way around. It was Calzaghe that battered him. And all of a sudden now, he was overrated, right? Never went on to do anything. Not Joe ruined him. No. He was just overrated. You understand? So when you're David Benavidez and you've not fought anybody, if Canelo goes and puts a beating on you and knocks you out, in 4 or 5 years to come, what's going to happen? If Benavidez doesn't go on to achieve big things, don't forget, the Benavidez brother, I know he's been shot in the leg and stuff like that, but Benavidez's brother was considered a really hot prospect. No one talks about him in that way anymore. So if Benavidez, David, ends up getting battered by Canelo and knocked out, what are you going to say in 4 years from now? Well, who did Canelo fight, right? Who did he fight? Benavidez? Nah, man. Who had he fought? He weren't anybody. You understand? Go and build a legacy, build a profile of some sort. Beat 1, 2 top 10 guys, and then turn around and say, you know what? I'm here. Because what really matters after years past, it's not just the O on your record. What matters is how big the wins are that you go on to get in your career. In years to come, people aren't going to turn around and say, Miguel Cotto is not a legend because he lost to Austin Trout. They're going to look at the massive fights that he did win. Okay, that's what puts you on that status, the big scalps you claim. So for you to be considered a big scalp yourself, you have to earn that. You know how in those old school warrior barbarian movies like Conan the Barbarian, you'd have all these warriors turning up and they'd be having scalps like attached to their clothing. It was like badges of honor. This is a scalp of one warrior I took in Mongolia. This is another scalp I took of another warrior in, like, I don't know, the Caucasus Mountains or something. If you're turning up and you got no scalps on you, the other warriors ain't taking you seriously, go claim some scalps. That's my point. If you want to stand out, you want to say you're a better warrior than Charlo. Charlo wants to say he's a better warrior than you. Andre wants to say he's better than both of you. Start fighting each other. Why did Benavidez's manager ask for $7 million in order to accept the fight against Demetrius Andrade? What are you talking about? There's your moment right there. If you can bang out Demetrius Andrade, who can say anything to you after that? I've beaten Demetrius Andrade, a guy you didn't want to fight. That could be the narrative you use, right? Now people are going to start demanding it. And with regards to Andrade, he's the only one of all these dudes who, in a way, I can understand his frustration. Because when he was the middleweight, he had the one outstanding middleweight belt. And Canelo Alvarez could have become undisputed by fighting him, and instead he jumped up 2 weight categories to fight Kovalev. Now Kovalev was clearly washed. He was ripe for the picking, and we all knew that he could be hurt to the body. And we knew that Canelo Alvarez was a really big body puncher. So you knew you had the opportunity there against a washed light heavyweight to go and do something historic. Now, do you consider that a logical step and a big gamble for a middleweight to take? Or do you see it as, nah man, this is a manufactured path because it's harder to fight Andre who's in his prime? This is why going through weight categories isn't always a sign of domination. You know, you get certain middleweights like Marvin Hagler, like Gennady Golovkin up until last night, where they spent pretty much their entire reign in one weight category, but they're willing to take on all comers. And they were either ducked in the way Billy Joe Saunders didn't want to fight him. At one point, Canelo gave up his belt not to fight him. Miguel Cotto avoided him. Chris Eubank Jr., the story about him losing his pen. Those ducks are submissions. They are acceptances of inferiority. So in that moment, you are willing to take on all comers and you are proven to be the king because the rest are basically bowing down before you and paying tribute. Or you can be like Marvin Hagler, where people aren't afraid and they are getting in the ring with you and you're dealing with everyone that comes in front of you. That's dominant within one weight category. If you're going to go up through the weight categories, but you're not fighting the top guys and you're manufacturing a path, you're going up, you're fighting a weak champ, you're taking him out, you're coming back down, you're taking out another weak champ, you're going back up, you're fighting somebody else who's not as good. That's manufacturing a path, right? Whether you consider Canelo to have ducked Andre or not, therefore, that's another conversation. I'm not going to mug you off if that's what you feel. But by the same token, Demetrius Andre doesn't help himself. He could have fought Charlo, the younger Charlo, and pulled out on a week's notice or something like that. Aleem Kanouli's another one. And Aleem Kanouli's Kazakh. You go do a number on Aleem Kanouli and you start saying to Golovkin, look at what I just did to your countryman, that's going to cause a bit of furor domestically, where Gennady Golovkin is a superstar out in Kazakhstan. He's going to be under pressure from his own fans saying, listen, you got to get a bit of revenge here for national pride. Well, the next thing you know, you've lured in Golovkin into a fight, an aging Golovkin. So now you've beaten Aleem Kanouli, you might beat an aging Gennady Golovkin. Now Canelo Alvarez can't ignore you anymore. So these dudes are not helping themselves. And just to let you know that there's no fanboying on this channel here, this excuse that Canelo Alvarez is using about not wanting to fight Mexicans, what is he banging on about? David Benavidez's dad, the one thing he said that was true is, listen, we want to fight Golovkin. He ain't afraid of Mexicans. He's been sarcastic and he's trolling Canelo because what Canelo's saying is ludicrous. Imagine the Americans coming out and saying, we don't want to fight each other. We're brothers. We're from the same country. We both represent the United States. Bud and Spence holding hands over a barbecue singing Kumbaya, and they don't want to fight each other because they're from the same country. Who are you kidding, man? Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. Listen, I know we were talking about making this fight on December the 3rd, potentially the biggest heavyweight fight of all time, but we can't make it happen, man. Are you serious? We represent the UK. The Queen just died. We can't be doing things like that to our countrymen. Nah, man, we're together. He didn't have a problem, Canelo Alvarez, dropping a 7-punch combination on Josecito Lopez, obliterating the dude, sending him into another universe. He was Mexican. You had no problem fighting Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. when my man was walking around looking like a corpse. He was so drained, if you saw that dude in a cemetery, you're calling the Ghostbusters. And all of a sudden, you got a problem with fighting Mexicans. Who you kidding, man? Get out of here with these fake excuses. They're mocking us, all of them, everyone. Whether it's Canelo Alvarez with these silly comments, whether it's the others that are demanding to get a shot, otherwise they're being ducked. Start fighting people. And if they do start fighting people and they earn their shot, stop coming at me with this stupidness about, I don't want to fight Mexicans. Leave it out. Anyway, let me know what everyone thinks about this. As you can see, I'm wound up by all the parties, everybody involved. Early hours of the morning, I'm supposed to be winding down a nice little video before I go bed. And here I am getting my blood pressure raised by everyone. Anyway, let me know what you think. Please hit the like button with a stiff jab, the subscribe button with a right cross, and the notifications button with an uppercut. Thank you for watching, everyone. Tomorrow I will be bringing another video, a technical breakdown of a couple of the fights that we saw at the weekend. Arslanbek Makhmudov against Carlos Takam. I want to talk about Bam Rodriguez and maybe another couple of fights on the Frank Warren card as well. Thanks for watching, everyone. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.